I wanted to begin with an overview of how the lectures, the textbook, and the supplemental PDFs all work together. The main impetus for the class is the textbook, so the majority of information you will gain by reading and reviewing the textbook. These lectures are basically going to take you through highlights and point out the big picture. And then the supplements, the PDFs, will give you additional insight into definitions, into historical items, historical places, figures, and so forth. And so between all three of these, plus the links section, you're going to have everything you need. We begin with a brief history, a brief run-through of the invention of writing and development of the visual form of alphabet, which is language in written form, and some of the cultural perceptions and impetus for having things in writing. Once things are in writing, they become graphic. The word graphic comes from the Greek, which means to write. So graphic design deals with things that are written down, things that are depicted, from ideographs all the way through phonetic alphabets. Way back when, in the very beginning, people were writing down or depicting things to preserve ideas, to preserve thoughts, and to help communicate. And this image is from the cave at Lecture in France, and it's dated around 15,000 to 10,000 BC. And it shows random placement and shifting scale of the figures, the animals, and they signify a lack of structure and a lack of sequence in recording experiences and ideas. But there's still the attempt to write something down, to put something down so that it will last. Here's a detail from the cave. And you can see, if you've studied design fundamentals at all, which deals with the theory of aesthetics, you do have line, you do have shape, you do have color, you do have value contrast, and all of those aesthetic issues which are pretty much inherent within the human makeup to understand and order information. Moving into pictographs and ideographs and so forth. This is an early Sumerian pictograph on a tablet, about 3100 BC dated, and it shows basically the seeds of alphabet forms. Information is structured into grids, and so there's a sense of organization. There's a vertical and horizontal division in this tablet. And this would have been inscribed via a reed or a stylus into clay. And so clay and stone were the first substrates used. The pictographs developed into a sort of a script known as cuneiform, and cuneiform used pictures or forms that represented words. And this developed later into a more abstract writing, and the cuneiform word comes from the impression, the wedge shape impression that the stylus left in the clay. And notice also there's a structure to this. There are horizontal and vertical divisions, and within each division there are forms, inscribed forms that convey the ideas. One of the most famous and earliest set of laws was inscribed under the rule of Hammurabi, and this was initially written down about somewhere between 1792 and 1750 BC. And Hammurabi himself is shown sitting on a mountaintop receiving the code from the sun god Shamash. And this was written down for the people in Babylon, and was set up so that everybody, all the populace, would be aware of the law. And again, you can see the horizontal and vertical divisions in the ordering of the forms themselves. There's something about seeing something that makes it more concrete or more tangible. We can present an idea verbally, but if we actually depict it in some manner, whether we write it down or whether we draw it out, we create an information graphic. There is something about how that tangible thing stays with us long after the verbal conversation has faded into memory. And so the graphic form is incredibly important for recording ideas, defining cultures, establishing cultures, and for recording history. The Rosetta Stone was discovered by Napoleon's troops when they were building a fortification for war. And the Rosetta Stone is a slab of black granite, and it bears an inscription in 3 scripts: Greek, Egyptian hieroglyphic, and Egyptian Demotic. And it communicates a decree that was issued in Memphis in 196 BC on behalf of King Ptolemy V. Very often, and we do this today, especially in our worldwide culture, our global culture, we'll put the same thing down in several languages. Cosmetics and hair care products have been doing this for a long time, but also instructions. You'll get them in English and Spanish. You'll get them in English, French, and Spanish. You'll get them Italian, French, English. So the different languages and the different cultures are, shall we say, cared for, acknowledged, and what is being communicated spreads to a greater population when you juxtapose the same thing in various languages in various forms. Egyptian manuscripts and wall paintings use design conventions that include hieratic scaling, contour line, vertical divisions of space, hieroglyphics that are aligned between the linear divisions, borders, and the use of image alongside the written form. And much of the Egyptian manuscripts were visual narratives for teaching and for communication and for recording of history, historical events. And hieratic scaling, of course, is the increase in scale to denote importance. It has nothing to do with linear perspective or distance. And so the more important figure or person would be depicted at a larger scale. And papyrus, of course, is a form of substrate that is from the papyri plant, and it is basically beaten into a pulp and flattened, and then used as a substrate for writing and drawing. This is the Phaistos disc, and it combined alphabet forms and pictographs, and it worked from the center out in a spiral, and both sides were used. And this is at about 2800 BC. This is a diagram that indicates the evolution of several Western alphabets, and it links the early Cretan pictographs to the later alphabet, the Aramaic alphabet, based on similarity in appearance. The Greeks were the first to really look at order and formality in terms of communication, to facilitate communication. And so this is an example of Greek alphabet that shows a symmetrical form of the letter forms and an even regular visual rhythm. And once the Greeks did this, it became the prototype for further development of alphabets. Notice that things are running now horizontally rather than vertically. And they're running basically, there's a common baseline to the lines of type, the lines of letters. The letter forms also were very much influenced by the instrument that the scribe used to create them. So there is a strong personality type in the forms themselves. This is a little later Greek inscription, and you start seeing some stylization of the letter forms. Basically, in terms of, there's a three-sided square with a central dot that represents the E right here. And there's a V-shaped horizontal bar in the A, so stylization began to occur within the Greek alphabet writing system. Notice that there is a nod toward an implied line and an actual design and relating the image area, the bas-relief area, to the paragraph or the box of type. The uncial form of writing actually was convenient because it reduced the amount of strokes that would take to create a letter form. So you would create an A with 2 strokes instead of 3 and an E with 3 strokes instead of 4. So it created a large amount of economy and quickness in terms of the time taken in terms of writing things down. And very often things change according to need or convenience. In the Asian culture, character rather than alphabet became the driving force. And this is a illustrated woodblock print that deals with the topic of herbal medicine. And you'll notice the linear divisions, the regularity of weight of the calligraphic forms, the juxtaposition of illustration, the borders, and the uniformity of the height and width of the designs. Printing, the reproduction of graphic forms in multiples, which is what printing basically is, arose first in the Asian cultures and then spread. Instead of everything being handwritten line by line and copied by an individual to make multiple copies, now there was one master that was reproduced via transfer of ink onto a different substrate. And it was much quicker, much more convenient. Things could be distributed more easily to the general population. And it made for greater, increased influence and greater ease of communication. And one of the first types of printed form using woodblock in China was the idea of the playing card, which was, of course, for gaming. But these show cards set up with numerical sequences. This would be printed as one and then sliced into individual playing cards. But this is something that even the illiterate population could use and enjoy and use as a tool to interface with others and in their card games and so forth. And it also depicted royalty, and it was numerically set up, so there was a sequence. And these playing cards are actually the basis of our playing cards today. So certain things have not changed, certain conventions in design have not changed through the years. You know, playing cards are in suits, and they are numerical, and they do contain images of royal figures. In the what we'll call the Fertile Crescent area, we had the rise of Aramaic, Hebrew, and Arabic writing, and those are alphabet-based rather than character-based. And they all come from the original Sumerian idea of alphabet. And so there is a strong similarity in written manuscripts in terms of page size, in terms of decoration between the three different languages and their written forms, and how things are depicted on papyrus or on parchment or on paper. So this is a page from a Quran, and it shows intricate pattern, and it shows interlocking form. The color is fairly vibrant, and the same design motifs can be found in Islamic architecture and furnishings. So there are now cultural conventions that are carried on through the written forms and visual forms and spatial forms.